So we may be coming live any moment now. Did I see that head nod? Yay! And it still is not showing me that it's live. Isn't that too funny? So, hey, Lynne, welcome. Good morning.
Hey, ready for a good time.
I know it's always so great. I just so appreciate you joining me in this fun venture. And today is, I know, one of your favorite subjects, as well as becoming more of my favorite subject. And it's about our brain, and I'm adding in the belief. So, our brain and belief, because it's all tied together. Our brain is so amazing. I mean, it rewires and we learn and heals and creating. And I love a comment that you made in your book, and we can talk about that in just a second. But Lynne says that the brain can help or hinder us. And so, and we can decide what we want to keep and what we don't. So it's going to be really exciting to hear that. So, Lynne, welcome again. Tell everybody a little bit about you, and you can tell them a little bit about your book here if you want.
Okay, well, as Delinda mentioned, I am a neuroscience nerd. I study the boring brain research and then try to figure out what it means in the real world. And then I turn that into practical hacks that people can use every day to do a better job of connecting with others. Because my mission is to use communication to help people solve their problems and get what they want. And usually, from a professional standpoint, that's fast tracking them to be seen, heard, and promoted. And as Delinda mentioned, my new book, Persuasion GPS, came out this year. And in my world, GPS stands for goals, because magic things happen in your brain and in the world when you set goals well. P is for people, and not just knowing who they are, but how their brains work, so you can do a better job of connecting with them. And S is for showcase. Showcase what's in it for them in a language that they understand. So when Delinda invited me to come this morning and talk about goals, which is the G in GPS, I was excited.
Yeah, and I'm going to remind y'all, because one of my favorite things for the last however many years that Lynne has talked about that has to do with networking. She is like the main person on the whole, 7 seconds. Don't tell your name in the first 7 seconds. 7 second rule. So I love that. You want to explain that a second? Because there may be some listening to us this morning that have never heard that, and they need to know.
Okay, well, glad to do that. Once again, boring research is, well, actually, so let me ask you a question. How many times have you been to a professional event or even a family reunion and you've been talking with a new person for a couple minutes and you realize you cannot for the life of you remember that person's name?
All the
And
time.
yeah, and then what ends up happening is that if it's professional, you're looking at the name, looking for the name tag. And a lot of times women have long hair and they're covering up the name tag so you can't see it. And a lot of times men have the really long lanyards with their name at the bottom. And if you're trying to check out their name, it could be a little embarrassing. And so you don't want this person to know that you've forgotten their name. And at the same time, then a friend comes over and expects you to introduce this person, and you're tap dancing as fast as you can so that they don't know you forgot their name. Okay. You are not stupid. This is just how your brain works. So here's the research. Our conscious mind can only process between 10 to 50 bits of information per second. And when you meet a new person, you're getting a whole lot more than that. And for some reason, research shows that the first thing people notice is your hair. Who knows why? So, notice the hair first, and then there's all this other stuff. So, and that's usually when people introduce themselves, is in that first 7 seconds, right? But your brain is overwhelmed with information, and so it just throws out their name. Second bit of data is that people's names have no inherent meaning in our brain unless we can make an immediate association. So if I say, hi, my name's Lynne, and you have a cousin named Lynne, okay, you can make that association and it's easier to remember my name. But if I say, hi, my name's Norma, and you've never run into a Norma before, your brain, which is already overwhelmed, throws the name out. And the third bit of data is that in Western cultures, the most important word in the language is our first name. So now you know your brain has conspired against you to forget the thing that will help you best connect with this new person you've met. That's the research. So I say, now that you know this, use my 7 second rule, which means never introduce yourself in the first 7 seconds after having met a new person, because you don't have the bandwidth to remember their name when they say it. Well, of course, you can't stand there for 7 seconds not saying anything without looking creepy. So what do you do instead? And you basically got two choices. The first choice is you ask a question. Oh, is this the first time you've ever been to this conference, this seminar? And and then let them answer, or make a statement like, "Oh, it's a beautiful day outside. I didn't expect it to be this warm." And then let them answer. And by the time they're done, you'll know 7 seconds have gone by. And now your brain can focus. And you can look at the person who will then introduce herself, usually with her first, excuse me, her first and last name. Forget her last name. She doesn't care if you remember her last name. And so just focus on the first name. So you only have to remember one word. And then you can use the techniques that people have been telling you to use for years that have never worked. So you look her in the eyes and you say, "Belinda, it's such a pleasure to meet you. So tell me more about what you love about your job." And then you get to listen to what Delinda has to say. And then you keep looking her in the eyes and working her name into the conversation. And then you'll move her name from your short term into your longer term memory, which means when you see her later in the day, you'll still remember her name.
I so love that. That's why I always have you share that, because I know that a lot of people don't know that information, or even if they've heard that, if they've heard me say, because I use that a lot. I have totally adapted, always give you credit. But I have adapted that. It has changed how I network. And it also keeps me from feeling so stupid. I mean, I just, I'll say, like, what is the matter with me? Well, it's so nice to know that there's nothing the matter with me. It's just how the brain works. So it's so, take the pressure off. So thank you for that.
No,
So
glad to share.
thank you, thank you. So as we get into our topic now, we're already talking about the brain, Lynn's already got us in there. I think it's important to think about. I love the verse, Romans 12:2 says, wait a minute. I thought it had it right here for me, but I'm going to go back. I'll look that up for you guys. But so as in his heart, so a man thinketh, so he is. So what we think about, and we hear the more modern interpretation of that is what you think about, you bring about. What we think is so crucial. And so the more we can understand our brain and how it works, then we realize, and I think that's what you're going to tell us a little bit about here, is that we actually control that. And the brain is so amazing. I mean, God created us, our whole selves, our bodies, our brain. And what a powerful, I mean, my gosh, we've got this major, powerful computer of a brain that we don't even use. What are the statistics on that one? We only use so much tiny percent.
Like 10, yeah, the rule of thumb is 10%. You only use 10% of your brain. But that's a little bit of a fallacy because your brain is so interconnected. You can't say, well, I'm just using this, this part here. It's like, there's so much going on in the brain that you're only using 10% of that at any given moment. So it's not just part of it. It's it's the whole thing.
Good. So I can't just say, okay, now my 10% is going to be from my recall, which is where I have my most problems. But one of the things that you say in your book, and I love this, right in the chapter 2, is that your brain is helping and hindering you with reaching your goals. Know how to amplify the useful stuff and dump the rest. So talk to us about that.
And for me, and there's a reason that G goals is the first G in GPS, and that is because I work with CEOs and C-suite people and people who want to be leaders, and I do this through conferences and I also do it through training programs, and I always tell them, if you remember nothing else about anything I say today, remember this: start setting goals. Because what ends up happening from a brain perspective is that once you decide there is something that you want, because you already know your conscious mind processes between 10 to 50 bits of information per second, while your subconscious mind processes like 11 to 14 million bits of information per second. So your subconscious mind has access to a lot of things you don't even know you have. And and the example I like to think is you share is Okay, so right now your subconscious mind knows how your derriere feels in the chair. So how many of you are now thinking about how your butt feels in the seat? Yeah. The scoop is your subconscious mind was collecting that information because your conscious mind wasn't telling it was important, it wasn't bubbling that stuff up. So when you set goals, what ends up happening is that your conscious mind tells your subconscious mind something is important. And then your subconscious mind starts chewing on this and trying to find information that will help you get to your goals. And you're not expending any more information or focus to make that happen. So I say, get your conscious and your subconscious minds working with you to create what you want, rather than the usual process, which is most of us wander into a situation and we wing it. And we're talking about networking. And I remember when I first started networking, excuse me, as a new business owner, I thought it was my job to go into a networking event and get a new client. And guess what? I sucked because it was nobody else's goal in that room was to find me and work with me. And so, you know, instead, I realized I was setting an unattainable goal, which actually disincentivized me. And I didn't want to go to networking events because I wasn't finding clients. I was never meeting my goal. And so these days, my goal is usually something like this. I want to have 3 interesting conversations and walk away with the name of one person I want to see again. And there's nothing in there about new business now. It is about being present and enjoying the people that I'm with and knowing I'm going to find at least one person I want to talk to some more. And then all the pressure is off. I'm able to be present in the moment. I'm able to hear what people have to say and really listen and pay attention to them. Yeah, and at the same time, all of us also, because I have a goal of 3 interesting conversations, there are times when all of us run into somebody who is not a good fit for a conversation at a networking event. And it could be the person who only wants to hand you his business card, who only wants to talk about himself, who
Always.
yeah. And and so I call that, and we can feel like a prisoner. How can we get away from this person without being rude? And so I've learned over the years I call it the catch and release. So I'm in a conversation with somebody and I realize there is no way either one of us can help each other. So I say, it's been interesting learning about who you are and what you're up to. And I know you're here to network with a bunch of other people, as am I. So enjoy the rest of this event and I hope you make some good connections. And I smile and I walk away and nobody feels badly. And I don't feel like my time is being sucked up by somebody I can't help and who can never help me.
I love that. What a great idea. Those of you who love networking out there, take case in point there. That could really help you because I know there have been times that I've seen it, and I'm sure it's happened to me as well, that somebody is going on and on. You're just trying to find one pause to even excuse yourself. So, oh, anyway, continue. This is great.
And so it's funny because I say whenever you're going to have an important conversation or write an important report or anything that's significant to you, set goals first. And one rule of thumb I have is that our short-term memory can only really hold about 3 ideas. So never set like 5 goals. Set 3. And the best way to do that is literally to sit down with a sheet of paper and think about what your goals are and then write them longhand. And here's another bit about the brain is that we have been writing longhand for much more than we've been sitting at a keyboard. Because what happens is that the left part of your brain gets excited when you're writing because you're dealing with language. And the right part of your brain gets excited because your hand is moving across a sheet of paper. So both sides of your brain are stimulated to help you come up with great ideas. But sitting at a keyboard and typing, there's not a physical motion to get your brain excited. So sometimes the old school is the best. So literally write out a bunch of goals and then pick your top 3. And so I was working with a group of seniors and applying persuasion GPS. And I do this custom stuff for them whenever I do this program. And so for them, it became, what kind of difficult conversation do you want to have? And they dove right in with, I want to talk with somebody who has different political views than I do. And I thought, yeah, we're jumping in the deep end right here. And so what we ended up doing was creating an avatar of the person that we were speaking with. So it turned out to be a 65-year-old man who had opposing political views, and who was a friend, but we believed that the friendship was in danger because our beliefs in the political sphere were so different. I said, so now what we're going to do is we're going to create goals for that conversation. And somebody, piped up with, I want to listen to understand this other person's point of view. And I thought, great goal. And we
Great.
talked about what's involved with listening for understanding and empathy, which is that deeper level of listening than just listening to respond. Or even worse, I can't wait until you shut up so I can talk. And so, listen to understand their viewpoint. And then another person came up with another great goal, which was, I want to be the best version of myself in this conversation. Perfect. Okay. Which means I'm not going to interrupt this person. I am not going to, I'm really going to be there and be in the conversation. And then a third person suggests, I want this person to now share my political views. And I said, okay, so let me ask you this question. How likely is it that somebody else is going to share an opposing political viewpoint with you and that will change your mind? And he said, not really likely. I said, so that's kind of like an unattainable goal. And so, what else should we have instead? And we found a different goal. So a lot of times doing the goal stuff, writing down what you want, you can realize just the way I did with thinking, I want to walk into this networking event and walk away with a client, that I could spend 15 minutes and change my friend's mind on his or their political goals, political viewpoints. Not going to happen.
Yeah.
So it shifts then the experience that you're going to have so that you can be present. The third goal ended up being, I want this person to continue to be my friend.
Ah,
These
great.
were all things that we could do, and it didn't involve them changing us or us changing them.
I love that. I mean, and when you walk in and you have really feel like you have obtainable goals, then your whole experience is different.
Mhm.
It could be whether it's in a networking environment, it could be going to a meeting at church, it could be, going and just meeting somebody for coffee. I mean, I just want to get to know you better, whatever that is. But I found to my very, very beginning of networking, that's not our topic for the day, but there's no way to talk about the brain without these are the things that make it real, right? This is the
Mhm.
day-to-day stuff that you talk about. But in that beginning too, I thought I was supposed to, sign up a client, get, one of my coaching clients or something. It's like, and it was so much pressure. It just felt like a pressure situation. So if any of y'all have ever felt that, and I have a feeling about 99% of you probably have, just taking that pressure off that, gosh, I just want to meet one person to do a one-on-one coffee with. That's very attainable. Even if there's only 5 people there, you could probably have coffee with one,
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
anyway, that's awesome. Thanks, Lynn.
Yes, yes, and fewer sweaty palms.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
You know,
So
go
yeah,
ahead.
no, I have to say, so uh, how do we know when our brain's hurting us and harming us? Now, and it doesn't really want to hurt us, but it kind of just happens. Is that right?
Mhm. Well, and the statistics are pretty horrific. It's like over 80% of your thoughts are recurring thoughts, thoughts you thought before. And of those 80%, it's like 90% of those thoughts are negative, which
90?
is, yes, it's horrible.
It's
Because
horrible.
and here's the truth, because the original job our brains had was to keep us alive. So our brain was constantly scanning the horizon, looking for physical and verbal risks and threats and getting us out of the way. That's why we're all here today, is because our brains learned how to get us out of trouble, which means
Mhm.
that there's a part of our brain that's subconscious that's always looking for things that could hurt us, then defaulting toward the things that are safer. So our brains have a negative bent, which means that our thoughts can be negative. That if it's 80% of our thoughts are recurring and 90% of those are negative, yes, that's just how our brain operates. So if I stood in the doorway of that networking event and thought, I want to get a new client, but geez, I never get new client, and I'm not going to get a new client here. And so what happens is that's what my conscious mind is saying. And I say that, and it drops down into my subconscious mind, which wants me to get what I want, but I have to tell it. So when you have a negative goal, I'm never going to get a new client here. Well, guess what? Subconscious mind hears that. It wants you to get what you want, and it starts chewing on that. And you stub your toe through the whole networking event. So be careful what you feed your subconscious mind. You want it to be thinking about positive. You want it to have, okay, 3 interesting conversations and 1 person I want to walk away with and see again, versus I'm never going to get a new client here. Or if it's a meeting, oh, they're never going to buy off on my idea. Whenever you talk negatively to yourself, and there are plenty of people who focus on law of attraction and manifestation and all of that kind of stuff, but there is something behind it that your brain gives back to you what you feed it. And it's the line that Delinda was using before, and the other phrase I've heard is, you are what you think about most of the time. And so if you're thinking about, I want to achieve this, this is my intent, this is what I'm going to do, this is how I'm going to make it happen, then it's like, and I know people who even do this with traffic lights, who say, I'm in a hurry, I want traffic lights to be green for me. And as opposed to, I'm sure I'm going to hit every red light on the way there, and I'm going to be even more late. And I've noticed it with myself when I put out that positive, hey, I want to get there on time, please help me with green lights. And versus, okay, yeah, here comes a fire truck. And so just be careful. How what you feed yourself is what you get back.
That verse that I mentioned earlier that I hadn't seen anyway, whatever. Romans 12:2 is be transformed by the renewing of our minds. We have to change our minds. We have to renew it and put those good thoughts in. One that I used to do a lot, and I'm still catching myself. Scripture also tells us to take those thoughts captive. Was okay. Oh, I'm so bad at remembering names. I'm going to go. It's like, oh, I'm never going to remember these people I meet. And I mean, by the time I got to wherever I was going, of course, I was not going to remember anybody's name. Now I've changed that. It's like, oh, I can't wait to meet some new people because people are important to me and I love knowing their name. So I've switched that mindset because I mean, 50 years I said that same negative thought, so it is powerful how we can reprogram ourselves. But I think it's knowing. And would you say, Lynn, the first thing starts with actually hearing ourselves? What is it that we're saying? I know my lingo used to be, I never remember names. My husband actually still says, you're terrible at names. And I'll say, no, that's not true.
Yeah, it's true. It's literally called rewiring your brain. And I heard somebody explain it. It's like you've been digging a ditch. I'm bad with names. You've been digging the I'm bad with names ditch for lots of years. And then what you want to do is replace that with, I know how to remember people's names. And what happens is that it takes a while for this to take, because the ditch you've been digging is so deep. And now you have to dig another one that ends up being as deep as you rewire your brain. You have to keep reminding yourself, no, this is what I believe. I believe this positive thing. This is what I'm going for. And that's one of the beauty of goals, is that it helps you rewire your brain so you get more of what you want and less of what you don't.
I love that. I love that. What other thoughts or what other ways can we make those changes? Or what tips do you have?
Well, and it literally is keep doing it a lot. And it could be the first time you sit down for goals, and yeah, I'm not, feels hard for me. And I call it, you start with what are called free writing or mind mapping, and which approach you choose, because I said brainstorm on what your goals could be. And if you happen to be one of those right-brained creative people, your brain is really associative, then what you do is something called free writing when you're setting goals. And you sit down, you set a timer for 5 minutes, blank sheet of paper and a pen, and it starts, and you just write without punctuation, without capitalization, without anything. You're just trying to pull things out of your brain. And once again, your left brain is engaged because you're thinking in words, your right brain is engaged because you're moving your hand across the page. And you set the timer and you just keep writing nonstop. And then, the 5 minute timer goes off and you look down, and for me, best way to do this is you look at everything you've written and you take out a highlighter and you just highlight the things that really make sense to you, as opposed to the things you wrote that really I have no connection with this because you just didn't want to stop writing.
So
And
quick question.
Mhm.
So when you're writing all that stuff, okay, you're writing for 5 minutes. What are you writing? You're writing goals, you're writing
Right,
writing
you're
what?
writing goals, the things you
Okay.
want to have happen in this situation that you're setting
Oh,
goals
okay.
for.
Okay, fine.
So, conversation, networking, something hard at work. So it's that kind of stuff. So it's what's the situation? And then your goals are, what do you want to create? What do you want to see happen?
Okay.
And there will be points when, yeah, you think you've run out of all the good stuff and you just stick silly stuff in there because you need to keep writing. But the truth is, 5 minutes is all you need, because after that, you've gotten the best from your brain. And then you can highlight the ones that are really important and then pick the top three. So that's if you're a right brain kind of creative person. If you're a left brain logical process kind of person, then what you'd use is something called mind mapping. So what you do is you take that blank sheet of paper, in the middle, you write, write your intention. I want to have a successful meeting, and then circle that. And then, at you set the timer for 5 minutes again. And then what you do is you write little phrases that, of things that would be goals. So listen more than I speak. And then you circle that and then draw a line back to the center. So for the thing that you want to create. And you just keep doing that for 5 minutes. And the scoop is, once again, your left brain is engaged because you're thinking in words. Your right brain is engaged because you're moving your hand across the sheet of paper. And then 5 minutes is up. You look down at the sheet of the paper, and first off, you cross out the little circles that have all the stuff in there. That's, you know, um, I want a good dental exam, which has nothing to do with your goal. And so, but you wrote it because you needed to keep writing. And so you just cross that out. So you cross out all the things that really don't have any bearing on this central idea that you've created. And then you take a look at the other ones and you prioritize them. Well, what's the most important of these? And you put one above it. And then the second most important is two. So then you prioritize them, and it's easy then to pick your top three. So what ends up happening is that both left-brained and right-brained people come up with goals, but the process that they use is different. And it's based on how their brains work.
That's cool.
And you create you create a clear outcome that then, of course, you already know goes from your conscious mind down into your subconscious mind, which, in the middle of the night will pop up an idea that you hadn't thought about because it's been working on this stuff while you haven't been paying, and your conscious mind hasn't been paying any attention to it.
I love it. I just typed that into the comments. Since you're doing most of the training and teaching this morning, I'm taking little notes and putting them in the chat box so you guys can check it out. And if I misdid it, Lynne will check it later. The quickie version of that. I love that. I've always done, I guess it was mind setting or mind mapping. I've always done the circles where, I take the paper, but I put the circles up first And sometimes they're clouds because I like the creative
Hmm.
thing. And
There you
then
go.
I start putting in what my priorities are from there. And somehow I like filling in the little circles. So I don't
Hmm.
know which one that actually fits, but the same process, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's mind mapping. And
Okay.
and for me, it literally is doing a brain dump. So either through the free writing where you just keep writing without punctuation, or the mind mapping where you create the clouds or the circles. And that way, if I'm sitting down with a sheet of paper, I'm not trying to prioritize anything. I'm just trying to get all the good ideas out of my head. Because if I sat there and thought, okay, what's the most important idea? I might never get off of that.
Yeah.
But if
Yeah.
I'm just trying to come up with a whole bunch of great ideas and then I'll figure out how great each one of them is later, that's easier for me.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I think that makes total sense. Of the times when I've done that, sometimes I've been surprised what just comes out. It's like, where did that come from? You know?
Well, and
So
I have to
yeah.
laugh because I had a client who for years did the computer mind mapping program. And I said, you got to try this longhand. And he said, this is working so well for me. I said, just humor me and do it once. And he called me the next day and he said, okay, you were right. By doing it by longhand, I came up with many more ideas than I would typically do when I sat at the computer. I said, because that's how your brain works.
I love that. I love that. Now, one of the things that you and I've talked about before, and we're already at the top of the hour. So quickly, um, you've talked about how and a lot of us, pray, and like at night, I'll go to bed and say my prayers, and oftentimes I'll be just thinking of goals and just talking to the Lord about things. And you have talked about how that from a scientific standpoint, when you think about these certain things, then your mind kind of goes to work while you're sleeping, right?
Right. Hmm. Yeah, it's true because your brain uses sleep as a way to regenerate itself because it's been busy all day long. And so what ends up happening is when you sleep, it doesn't mean your brain sleeps, but your brain is like healing itself. But at the same time, once again, when your conscious mind has told your subconscious mind what it wants, it's working out ways to make it happen. And it could be, I remember one was it was, class reunion year this year. And I was thinking, now, what was the name of that kid who sat behind me in homeroom? And I could not for the life of me remember his name. Of course, I woke up at 2 in the morning and there was his name. It's like I'd stop paying attention to it. My subconscious mind had. And a lot of times, if you ask yourself a question before you go to bed, I don't know, tell me how to do that. What's the best way to do this? And then go to sleep. A lot of times you'll wake up with the answer because once again, your conscious mind hasn't been working hard on it. Your subconscious mind has because it has so much more information than you know you've got. And the other joke is if I say to you, don't think about a red Corvette, and now you're all thinking about red Corvettes, and now for the next week you will be surprised at the number of red Corvettes you see, because once again, your subconscious mind sees this stuff, but because you haven't told it it's important, it keeps it down there because there's only so much bandwidth you've got. But once you tell your subconscious mind what's important, it's amazing the things that bubble up in support of you getting where you want to go.
I love it. And so, those of you out there, you may just be watching for red Corvettes today as you're out driving. And when we were looking for our car a number of years ago, I knew that I wanted one of the smaller SUVs, but I wasn't sure what. And I mean, everywhere, it seemed like every parking lot was full of SUVs, all these different ones to look at. I mean, that is just crazy how that really works, how our brain does. So
Mm-hmm.
anyway, while we are at the top of the hour, Lynne, once again, it's been wonderful to have you. And I
Mm-hmm.
think probably for those of you out there, so I think that probably because Lynne does have so much great stuff in here about how our brain works. And I think for me, it helps me if I know a little bit more about how the brain works, I can be more effective in my day-to-day life.
Yeah.
Once I knew about the 7-second rule, totally changed how I network and how I am whenever I meet anybody. And so there's lots of other tips and things in here. So the more we understand, the better we'll communicate, the better we will move forward in our lives, the more likely our goals are going to come. And always just wanting to grow. We're all in wanting to grow and learn more. So we don't know what chapter next time, but we'll pick another chapter out of the book they got to go through. And feel free to reach out to Lynne. She would love, she's on Facebook. Obviously, y'all know that. Reach out to her if you have any questions. And her book is on Amazon, right?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
All right. Well,
yeah, your brain is a wonderful tool for you to use to get what you want. And at the same time, as Linda says, it's inspired by God. So, be open to reprogramming your brain to welcome in the things that the Lord wants to send you.
absolutely. And when there's a verse, and I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's one of my favorites. And what it says is, he can give us more than we can think or imagine. Now, this brain is pretty powerful. I mean, so the Lord wants to give us this thing. The more we understand, the more we appreciate what He's given to us. The fact that we actually have a brain, and all the things that we can do, and the inventions and the creativity that we have. So I would say be grateful and thank the Lord for the brain and how it works. And my prayer is always like, open my mind, Lord, so I can understand more. So, all right,
and a lot of
everybody.
times my goal is, put me in front of people who need my help today.
I love that. Yeah, that is great. That is great. All right, my friends, we are at the end of the morning. Thanks for joining us. Your time is your most valuable asset, and I appreciate you spending your time with us. Remember, as I've been talking, this whole year is about being chosen. And just like Jesus chose the 12 disciples, He has chosen you. He's chosen you for great things. He has a plan and a purpose. So you now get to choose what you're going to do with it. Are you going to feed your mind with those good things and think on those positive, good thoughts, or not? It really is up to you. Thanks so much, and we will see you next week. Bye now.
Bye.
And let's one more second here.